This video is an introduction to using SketchUp for schools. You start by going to edu.sketchup.com. It'll automatically fill in the /app for you after you press enter. Once you're there, click on Sign In with Google, select the appropriate account, you might only have one, and the system will go ahead and log you in. Once you get logged in, it brings you into the SketchUp for Schools environment. You can see that by default there's a person that gives you some sense of scale of what's going on in your drawing. For now though, I'm just going to go ahead and click on that person and delete them. So I've got a clean place to start. We're going to focus on a few specific tools in this video and try to show you some shortcuts at the same time. We're going to start off by using the rectangle tool. And you can see when you click on rectangle, it gives you a flyout. The first one is rectangle, but then it has some additional tools as well for a rotated rectangle, a circle, and a polygon tool, as well as doing some 3D text. For now, we're just going to work with the rectangle tool. When you bring out the tool, you can see that it brings a blue box along with a pencil. Once I'm there, I can click and drag, and you can see that it forms a rectangle that's lined up with the green axis and the red axis. I want to do something though a little more specific. You'll notice down in the right-hand corner, it shows the dimensions of the shape that I just drew. And it's a little bit awkward. It's also in the imperial system. So the first thing I'm going to do is press Ctrl-Z to undo my change. Or I could have used the undo button up here. And I'm going to go into the information screen, the model info screen. And I'm going to change the settings from 1/2 inch imperial to 0.0 meters so that it's moving into the metric system. And then for the precision, I don't need this much precision, so I'm going to just go with 0.00. So that means I can do things like 1.25 meters, and I'll get 1.25 meters. So once I've done that, I'll go ahead and close the panel again. This time, when I click the rectangle tool, I'm going to click and drag, and as I start to draw, you can see that it's in the right-hand corner, it's showing the dimensions. If, however, I type 1, 1, it's going to give me a rectangle that's exactly 1 meter by 1 meter. That gives me the opportunity to introduce a new tool called the tape measure, which does probably what you expect it to do. It helps you measure things. So if I click here and drag out, you see it shows me a dotted line, and when I get to the edge, it actually snaps to the edge, and it shows me that that is exactly 1 meter in length. If I hit escape, it takes that line away, and I can click and drag out here. And again, it shows me, if I let it go, it went out to exactly 1 meter. And again, I'm going to do the undo to get rid of that because I don't really need that right now. I knew it was going to be exactly 1 meter. Now I'm going to use another tool called the push-pull tool. So I click on push-pull, and I select the first tool, which is push-pull. And now, as I move over my rectangle, or in this case a square, you can see it highlights in blue when I do that. If I now click on that space and move my mouse up, it extrudes that shape. But I can do the same thing as I did last time, where I can set the distance by just pressing 1 and enter. It gives me a cube that's exactly 1 meter tall. Now, if you've got a scroll wheel on your mouse, if you roll your scroll wheel, it allows you to zoom in and zoom out. There's also another tool here called Orbit. If I click on Orbit, and again select the first tool, if I now click and drag, it allows me to take my shape and rotate it around and see it from any direction that I want. When I've got that tool selected, I can also click on the Shift key and move the mouse at the same time, and that allows me to move back and forth across the image. So move the image back and forth, or move the object that I've created, so I'm moving around in my construction space. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there for a second. And I'm going to go back to my tape measure tool, and I'm going to measure in from one side here, and this time I'm going to measure 0.25. Press enter. So that gives me a dotted line that's exactly 0.25 of a meter in from the edge, or 25 centimeters. And I'm going to do the same thing the other way, 0.25, and I'm going to do the same down from the top and up from the bottom. So I've now got a square that's set up 0.25 from each side. I'm going to go back and select the rectangle tool. I'm going to go back and click and drag out a square. And you'll see that as you drag out, it snaps to the corners and to the lines. So if I wanted to be partway along here, you can see it does some other things like finding the midpoint, but it'll also help me snap to the corner. So I click and snap there. By doing that now, I've drawn a rectangle on the face of the cube. I'm going to go back to my push tool. And now when I mouse back over, you can see, in this case, when I mouse over the end, it's showing me the highlight. It shows that the highlight is around the outside, but it's not highlighting the inside square. And when I move to the inside now, it's the only part that's highlighted. So now I can take the push tool and push it through. So I'm pushing it out. And now what I want to do is, you'll see it starts to come out the other side. But if I go and I leave my mouse right on the edge, so right on the edge of the line, so it's on that edge, and I let go there, I go back to my orbit tool. Now you can see it's actually pushed a hole all the way through. Because I stopped right at the edge, when it pushed through, it basically cut a hole through. Now I'll go back and use my tape measure tool again. And this time I'm going to measure out 0.5. And I'll measure down from the top the same distance, 0.5. So I've got a set spot right in the center. So now I'll go back and select the rectangle tool. And this time I'm going to choose circle. And as I put it on the face, it changes the orientation of the circle so that it's flat on that face. And circles start out from the origin, so right from the center of the circle. So I'm going to click there. And as I start to drag out the circle, you can see that it gives me a circle of different sizes. And I can do the same trick. This time, I want a circle I'm going to specify the radius of the circle. So I'm going to say it's got a 0.2 radius and press enter. So that's going to give me a circle that's about 0.4 in diameter. So that circle is a little bit smaller than the square that I punched through on the other side. So now I'm going to select the push tool and I'm going to push out that circle, but I'm going to make sure that I stop right on that edge. And now if I go and use the orbit tool again to look around, you can see that that hole only goes through into the square cavity, but it doesn't go all the way through to the other side. Now just to make things a little cleaner, I'm going to get rid of some of those measurement marks that I put on. So I select the select tool, and all I have to do is click on each of these lines. I select one and press the delete key on my keyboard. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to locate the center of the top. So I'm going to use the tape measure tool again to help me find the center. Typing in 0.5 and doing the same from the other side. So I've got the center place. Now I'm going to change to the line tool. And this time I'm just going to draw a line that goes straight up. And you see that the line that's being drawn is being drawn in blue. That shows that it matches this axis here. So it's going the same direction as that axis. If I went out this way, it changes the line to green. And if I went out this way, it shows that it's parallel to the red axis. But in this case, I want to go straight up. So I'm going to go up for a little ways. I'm not going to worry about whatever height I'm going up, but I've drawn a line there. Now I'm going to take that endpoint, draw another line down to the corner, and another line out to this other corner. As soon as I do that, it closes in the space because I've got two sides and then the third edge that already existed. And now if I take this endpoint and connect it to that corner, it closes in the other side. Changing back to the orbit tool, I can turn my drawing a little bit, go back to the line tool, click on the top endpoint, and when I click that other edge corner, it now closes in the last two faces. So we've been able to close the shapes in by creating a shape out of lines. It's also important to note, however, that if you delete some lines from a drawing, it can start to take away the faces you've created. So for example, if I selected just this line and press delete, it takes away both of those faces. Now I don't need this line anymore, so I could delete that one and put the line back in just for fun. So you do have to be careful that when you delete things, sometimes you might be deleting something important, and sometimes you don't notice until later on when you realize there's something funny with your drawing. Now that I've got my shape, I can go ahead and add some color to it. To do that, I go to the Materials tab on the right-hand side, and by default it's going to show some colors. If you click on Search, you get access to a number of other types of features. So for example, supposing we wanted to put some roofing on the roof. I could go ahead and select some shingles, and clicking the bucket, put some shingles on it. I'm going to go ahead and look around, move it around, and keep adding shingles. Now it's a little bit funny because those shingles seem kind of huge. Now it's only a 1 meter square box, so that kind of makes sense, but we could go ahead and we can edit those settings as well. If we go back to our Home tab and click on the shingles that we're using, I guess I chose 2 different kinds of shingles here. Click on the shingles that we want to use, and I click on the Edit Material button. I can now change this value, and by changing that, it changes the density of the tiles. So I'm going to go ahead and change all of them to be the same like that. Just looks a little bit better. Now go ahead and rotate, and I'm just going to go in. This time I'm going to choose a color, paint the inside walls that color, paint the floor a different color, and paint the outside wall a rich red. As you get more comfortable with SketchUp, you'll find that there are some keyboard shortcuts that really speed up the process. The spacebar will always return you to the Select tool, so that's the pointer when you're clicking on things. The Shift key is great when you're in orbit mode because it'll toggle you quickly from spinning the object to sliding the object around. As you get a bigger design, that comes in really handy. The Tape Measure tool, you can hit the T to draw rectangles, hit R. When you want to move the selected object, we didn't get into that too much, but you hit the M key. When you want the Orbit tool to rotate things around, hit the O, Push is P, and the Line tool is L, C for circle. A lot of them are pretty intuitive. The scroll wheel, as I said, controls your zoom for zooming in and out. If you ever get lost in your drawing, there's another piece of information that's really, really helpful. Sometimes if you get a really big drawing, you can sometimes get stuck inside walls and things like that. You don't know where you are. So if you go down here to the Orbit menu and click on Zoom Extents, it basically zooms you back so that everything in your drawing is visible. So if you are stuck inside, for instance, I can go in and get stuck in this wall. I might not know where I am. I turn around and all I see is gray. If I click on Zoom Extents, it'll take me back to a place where I'm outside and I can see what's going on. So those are some of the fundamental tools you need to get started with SketchUp. Go ahead and have fun.